Italian Wine Podcast. Chin Chin with Italian wine people.
Italian Wine Podcast, as wine2wine 2020 media partner,
is proud to present a series of sessions chosen to highlight key themes and ideas
and recorded during the two-day event
held on November 23rd and 24th, 2020.
wine2wine 2020 represented the
First ever fully digital edition of the Business to Business Forum. Visit wine2wine.net
and make sure to attend future editions of wine2wine Business Forum.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to this important and complex discussion titled The Benefits of a More Diverse Wine Industry. I'm joined today by Manjaval Janjo, a sommelier and wine importer and wine educator based in the UK. And we're going to be talking through some of the issues, I think, and some of the perspectives that might characterize this discussion. Mags, welcome. Hello.
Morning or afternoon, as the case might be. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. Are you well?
Very well, thank you. Really looking forward to this.
Excellent. Okay, well, let's dive in. As we know, it's entitled Diversity, but we take on this conversation at an interesting time, don't we? Obviously, we know the issues of COVID, and we know that this is an extremely challenging time for the wine industry. But this is also an opportunity for us to perhaps take stock of things and look at the kind of industry we've got and we may well end up with shortly and soon. Because after all, things were creaking, weren't they? Things are not rosy.
There were. I mean, 2020. Every industry, not just the wine industry, will agree that it has been unprecedented, the challenges we have faced. You know, the economies have been stretched to their limits, but you're absolutely right, Paul, in that before 2020, the signs, the writings were on the wall. You know, historically, the producing regions of producing countries like France, Spain, and certainly Italy had suffered sales domestically. You know, the per capita consumption was what's going down in these countries. However, we could take solace in the fact that export sales looked relatively strong. You know, the US, with its 400 million population, tend to absorb a lot of the wines that we had. The UK also 60 to 70 million population. Again, another strong export market. So although producing countries were struggling domestically, they could always take comfort in the fact that exporting wines were strong. But 2020 is one of those years. It was the first time, certainly in the last 10 years of being in the industry, where we've seen declining sales figures almost across the board, both on a domestic scale and on the export scale. So it presents us a unique set of challenge. And like you said, it's an opportunity to sit down and take stock of, right, how did we get to this position? And how can we ensure that we never... Because with the pandemic came challenges with traveling. And the wine industry is one of those industries which, as you know, relies quite heavily on traveling. Either that might be buyers going to countries of origin to source products, or producers going into new markets for trade shows. So how many trade shows do we know were cancelled this year? You know, Vinitaly and Bordeaux, London Wine Fair. These are huge events which the industry heavily relies on to stimulate business. And we just couldn't do any of that. And the companies which survived, or dare I say thrived in 2020, are those companies which have diverse route to markets. So in the past, for example, the holy grail for wineries would have been selling your wine direct to consumers or selling them to restaurants, where you could make a higher margin and you could decide who bought your wine in essence. Now, if you had that kind of business module and your business would say 80% to restaurants, you would have felt the full brunt of the pandemic, of the lockdowns. On the flip side, the guys who have got more diverse portfolio, selling to restaurants, but also selling to retail, also selling on the fine wine exchange, they would have done slightly better. Mm-hmm. So the argument or the point I'm trying to make is there is a real sterling value to having a more diverse portfolio, of having different routes to market. Now, if this year has taught us that, then we can now apply that to different parts of our business. And hopefully that's what we're going to be chatting about this kind of half an hour or so. Yeah,
absolutely. So we're really coming at this from the position that wine is losing market share. It's losing out to the spirits industry, to the beer industry. And the general feeling is that perhaps a younger generation of wine drinkers and lots of other groups and demographics who we wouldn't say are traditionally big wine drinkers, or if they are big drinkers, they certainly don't get spoken to in terms of the traditional marketing by the wine industry. We're really saying that the business is missing out, isn't it? And actually that we've got to really think about what the old image of the wine industry has been like, and ask, do we want that going forward? I mean, the figures don't lie, do they? I mean,
oh, wonderful. Yeah, I think, thank you. I think going forward, what the wine industry has done in the past, quite sadly, is chase trends, is chase the next hot thing. You go back to 2011, 2012, there was the Moscato boom in the States, and everyone kind of jumped on that bandwagon. We were producing, grafting, chopping off Chardonnay and chopping off other grape varieties and grafting on Moscato grape varieties to deal with that trend. And how long did that last? It was a year, 2 years tops. And then post that came the premium rosé trend. And we all flocked to the markets with, our biggest, richest, and heaviest rosés. And that lasted another kind of year, 2 years. And if you think about us as an industry, we're not built to be reactive. If you follow the supply chain backwards, it takes from planting a vineyard to harvesting, it takes 4 to 7 years. So we don't have that reactivity built into our supply chain. And so we therefore can't afford to use temporary solutions for permanent problems. Mm-hmm. And that's what I see trend chasing as. You're trying to, latch onto the next big thing.
Uh-huh. And so
we must, make no mistake, Paul, I think the wine, or I believe. No, go on.
Yeah, I think rather than chasing trends, actually, trying to extract sales from those kind of temporary movements, the wine industry would be a lot better off actually analyzing the different demographics that are potentially available as customers, which it feels like it traditionally doesn't, and perhaps that is the point at which we could ask ourselves what diversity means. It's a loaded term, and it's a complex term.
It is, and I think sometimes when the term diversity is thrown about, quite sadly, we feel threatened somewhat, or we feel uncomfortable with that conversation. And I think you hit the hammer on the nail by saying we really need to look at our customer data. The wine industry has struggled to do that historically. And this is something, the internet has been around for 30 plus years. And companies like Amazon have been doing this for 20 plus years. Looking at their customer data, Who's buying our wine? What is their age demographic? Where do they come from? What's the average bottle price? Where am I selling my wine to who? And sometimes, and you probably know this better than anyone else, we are inundated with, or we are kind of covered with requests for people, they send us samples, send us price lists, and prices look great. And the first thing which you do, not being able to travel, is to jump on their website, right? To look at who they are and what they do. And some of these websites look like they were designed, in the 90s. And so we've struggled to make our websites kind of SEO optimized, to make them look slick and smart, because that's what the young people are looking for. They want to be able to identify, the wine industry is only just jumping onto social media interaction and so on. So it's a little bit of a shame.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just 2 seconds.
We've got perhaps a delivery of samples. Okay, so we will. Okay, so welcome back. Let us chat about perhaps the discrimination that accompanies diversity. I mean, the wine industry has long been talking about increasing diversity, the benefits of diversity, and yet it seems like here we are still having this conversation, because at the end of the day, nothing's changed really. And so, why do you think that is? Do you think this is an industry loaded with discrimination?
I think for a long time we were comfortable with the way things were. We were producing wine and we could sell them, and things were rosy. So when you aren't kind of pushed against the wall, there is no incentive to change anything. But 2020 has incentivized us as much as we can be to take a long, hard look at ourselves. And the question which I'll ask, or the point which I'll make, is we as an industry can no longer literally ignore and let things carry. We are losing market share to beers, to spirits. Take, for example, hard seltzer. 10 years ago, that category did not exist. The first bottle of hard seltzer was made in 2013. 10 years ago, nobody knew what that was. It just didn't exist. However, looking at the data, in the US alone, they sold 1.5 billion just in the retail sector. And so if they're drinking hard seltzers, they're not drinking wine. And literally, what is hard seltzer? It's sparkling wine, low alcohol and flavor. It's easy to make, short turnaround, it's ingredient labeled. So these are what we're up against. It can be produced in a matter of weeks, as opposed to the wine industry, where the grape grower has to battle through the elements and wait 6 to 9 months. Sometimes if you're making a wine that needs oak, you're looking at the wine sitting in barrel for 2-3 years. These are the challenges. These are people who we are up against. We're up against the spirits category, you can have spirits on their own. You can have them as cocktail mixers. They've got so many different USPs, and they seem so much more switched on than we are. If anyone jumps onto YouTube and you Google Bacardi advert or Jameson advert, don't look at it from a point of view of an advert. Look at it from a marketing point of view. The advert will have young people in it. It will have female representation, and we will have other ethnic minority representation. And so it is easier for someone to see themselves in that product. Compare that to the classic wine advert. You'll have a shot of the vineyards and possibly the winemakers, swirling the glass and tasting the glass, and a few words about the wine. That's been a kind of go-to advert. Now, more often than not, this winemaker is a middle class or middle-aged white gentleman, which there's absolutely nothing wrong with. But then how does a 17 or an 18, 19, 21-year-old Black or ethnic or Asian person identify with that product? That's the challenge. So we really need to look at it from a top-down approach. We can't afford to let things lie anymore, because we are quite frankly bleeding market share.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. I think that as you've pointed out, the traditional delivery of wine marketing, of wine education, of wine culture is one that is based around privilege.
Agreed.
And, of course, wine is an aspirational product once you start to say that vineyard is better than this vineyard, and therefore the price is higher. You are into that world of privilege, and you almost have this vicious circle of elitism. But you're absolutely right. Young people are not looking at that and aspiring to be involved with that product category.
The point which I'll make as well is we do tend to, I feel like when we say wine is a luxury good, my kind of comeback to that is so is spirits. Spirits they're generally more expensive, and you've got entry-level, mid-tier, and super premium spirits. So what are they doing that we are not doing?
Mm-hmm.
So I think we for a very long time. Listen, if you create this idea of elitism and exclusivity, that only works when demand outstrips supply.
Yeah.
Okay. That module would only work if you've got more drinkers than you have wine to sell. But for a long time, the industry has not been in that position. And I don't think the industry will ever be in that position. So we can't afford to, exclude. There are huge untapped markets out there that we've, I don't know if it's consciously or subconsciously alienated ourselves from. Mm-hmm. But then, every time we have meetings, board meetings, we sit down and we talk about sales are suffering, and, we are losing numbers, and sales are not quite where they need to be. Yes, that's a problem, but we've got these rich markets that we haven't tapped into. So what we should be challenging ourselves is about saying, how can we make our products appeal to these other markets? And it's important. It isn't a conversation about we just create opportunities for the sake of creating opportunities. I think the industry needs to look at the entire supply chain, working backwards. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. If you go back into, you start from a vineyard point of view. Many wineries offer internships, or many wineries offer an opportunity to go work a harvest. And if you look at the demographic of what that harvest looks like, more often than not, it's a white man going to do that harvest. Mm-hmm. Now, if you included someone who didn't look like that, you have bought yourself, or you have got yourself a brand ambassador for life, because it's such a unique opportunity for someone who looks like me, sounds like me, to work a vintage. What happens after that vintage is they go back to their country of origin, and all they talk about for the next God knows how long is how amazing that experience was. Mm-hmm. That's free marketing.
And do you think that those people are not getting the opportunities, or do you feel that they are? I mean, do you feel that they are being not chosen, or do you think they're not even interested to apply for these opportunities in the first place?
I don't even think they are aware that the opportunities are out there, because here's an opportunity. Here's a kind of Pandora's box. The wine industry, we've turned to do things traditionally. In fact, we love the word traditional so much that we stick it into a category of wine, right? We've been so obsessed with this idea of things are done in a traditional and historic way. Great. I think from a production point of view, that works, and it should stay there, because once you start thinking about marketing and selling, you must be modern to evolve. You can't continue to sell the same product the same way to the same people and expect different change and expect different results. So we need to think about how we advertise these positions. For example, in the UK, if you've got a wine job, you're going to see them in two places. Either you see them in drinks business, or you'll see them on the WST jobs board. Now, the average person of origin doesn't know that these two websites exist. So you must think of how do I reach that new audience? How do I make them aware? So working with, there are several companies or several charities out there, or several bodies out there who are targeting kind of BAME or Black and other ethnic minorities. Those are the people which wineries need to be working with and saying, I've got an opportunity for X. I want to make sure that out of the 10 people that I have working my vintage, I want to include one person of color.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's play devil's advocate for a bit. There's a marketeer called Seth Godin. Many people are probably aware of him. He kind of summarizes all of his work by essentially saying that people buy from people like myself, like I buy from people I can relate to, and other people buy from people that they can relate to, right? And so the kind of crux of his message is that you should identify the customer that you are really trying to appeal to, and you should talk to them. Trying to talk to everybody, often is a recipe for disaster. You end up not really appealing to anybody. And so are we saying that it's not just about increasing diversity across sales forces, which is obviously important, but it's also about increasing diversity at the production end of the trade? We need more people creating brands that speak to different audiences, if you like.
Completely agree with you, Paul. I think wine I go back, my approach to this, you can probably agree, pick it up from now, is looking at the entire supply chain. There are several factors of winemaking which have nothing to do with wine, like packaging and labeling and branding and the materials that you use. You could use those as selling tools. If we put the same liquid in the same bottle with the same packaging, we're going to be appealing to the same person. So the point which you made is, we can do market tests, create different versions of a label and say, okay, amongst this demographic, which of these labels appeal the best to you? Amongst this demographic, which of the labels best appeal to you? So absolutely, we need to go back to drawing board. And the point which you made about people buying from people that look like them. Listen, if I can't see myself in a product, I'm less likely to buy that product, no matter how good it might be. So it's about finding clever and smart ways of being able to appeal to various markets. And like I said, it goes beyond, sales force. Go back to the winery, to the vineyard. What are the kind of, do you have, when you have your vintages, do you have different representation in there, in your marketing team, in your sales team, in your promotions, in your adverts? I mean, I really encourage everyone listening to jump on YouTube and just have a look at the Bacardi advert and have a look at the Jameson advert, and you'll get exactly what I mean.
Mm-hmm. I think we have a few minutes left, so I will just open up the floor to see if there's any questions. But while we see if they come in, do you want to tell us about your experience starting out in the UK trade? Have you felt a pressure to conform in order to navigate your way through your career, or? I think,
I think I'd be kind of short-sighted if I said it's been rosy. And that's one of the reasons why I'm very passionate about work on diversity. It's to make it easier, because listen, sometimes when you mention the word diversity, people think about creating opportunities for the sake of opportunities, or people think about charity. Diversity is not charity. It's more about empathy. It's about saying, for so long, the industry has looked like this. So how do we make it easier for someone who doesn't look like this to integrate into the industry? So everything from opening up doors which might previously not have been there, or considering other things which we might not have thought of. And yes, I've had where I was working as a specialist, a qualified wine specialist for a retailer, and I'd have people come in and want to talk to my colleagues instead of myself, even though most of my colleagues were working under my guidance. Because, the wine industry or the wine department was not really seen as, it's not something which you link a Black person to. And it's just these subconscious biases and these boundaries which we're trying to break down. by getting more people involved and getting more opportunities out there. And that's what they are. It's about creating opportunities, not about, giving away stuff for the sake of giving away stuff.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think one of the things that you mentioned in our previous discussions, which really kind of hit home the gulf, if you like, in reality versus what the wine industry generally seems to communicate, was that if you go into any city, you have a walk around any city on the planet, you go into the bars, you go into the restaurants, you have a look who's out drinking, wine or not, but the scene that you will see does not look like anything portrayed and delivered in wine communications. And so, the industry may not feel it is a pressing need today, amongst the crisis that we've got. But at the end of the day, it's losing market share, and it is completely separate from reality.
I think the word is it's out of touch. The wine industry is out of touch with reality. Before the pandemic, I did a lot of traveling, and like you said, we visit places like Milan, like Verona. We go to Toulouse, we go to France, we go to Spain, Italy, and you see the guys and girls who are out there drinking. It's a mix. It's a cosmopolitan kind of feel. And then looking at that compared to London, for example, compared to what the industry looks like, the wine industry is miles away from the reality in which we live. And so this talk about diversity is about saying, how can I pull the wine industry back into sync? Because if you're out of sync with your market, you're going to struggle to sell to that market. You're only selling to a part of that market. The more the industry looks like the world we live in, the better it will be for us financially, because we will be tapping into vast or previously untapped markets.
Mm-hmm. Kenneth Hayden has made a point in the chat, which I think we maybe touched on right at the beginning, but haven't emphasized enough. Diversity is not it's not solely about race and about minorities. It's about all sorts of things, and probably the complexity of this conversation rests on the fact that what is very important to one person is maybe not that important to somebody else, and diversity comes in many shapes, many forms. And as you say, that empathy that we need in order to bring all this together profitably is maybe missing, isn't it?
I think it starts from having conversations such as this. It starts from having difficult and uncomfortable conversations. Because, like we said at the start, the easy way out, right, Paul, is to just not have that conversation. Because it's kind of bringing you face to face with a reality which we would much rather not admit to. But until we have those difficult conversations, things will remain the same as they are. And as we've established, we literally can't afford to let things remain the same as they are. And I absolutely agree with Kenneth that diversity goes beyond black and white. It's a male and female. It's including people with disabilities. And these are all tough conversations to have. And they are all conversations which are going to be financially challenging, because if you're going to employ someone who's on a wheelchair, you need to make your entire building wheelchair accessible, right? So there's going to be a cost to it. But we are saying that the more we engage in these conversations, the better the long term we're going to be financially. It's about investing today for a better tomorrow rather than chasing trends and chasing the next hot thing. Because none of us could have predicted the pandemic, and lo and behold, it hit. So we want to be in a significantly better position, more insulated, if anything resembling this, God forbid, were to ever happen again.
Okay, let's finish maybe on 2 points. Are there any projects or initiatives that you think look at to find inspiration, to find ideas, to find advice on how they could, potentially do more to create opportunities, or just create a more encouraging, open environment?
So I can kind of give two pieces of advice, and there will be UK centered. I'm a little bit out in the States, but UK centered because I live in the UK. We've got BAME in hospitality, so Black and other ethnic minorities in hospitality. There, I work very closely with Lorraine, and it's about kind of looking at hospitality from a top-down approach. That's a great body to get in touch with, because you will get hold of chefs, sommeliers, bartenders, bar staff, front of house, back office, everything to do with restaurants. And you will get a rich, diverse culture. If you're looking to employ, there you go. That's a rich kind of database we've been working on building. We've also got BAME Wine Professionals, which is more centered on wine. And again, it's on that in the end of everything from production to sales. So we are actively trying to build a community which companies can reach out and say, listen, I've got X, Y, and Z opportunity available, and I need a few, non-white faces to apply. Who could you recommend? So those bodies do exist. It's about, winemakers or companies reaching out to us and working hand in hand to make the world a better place.
Okay, absolutely, I agree. Let's finally just look at maybe what producers, particularly in Italy, can do. They're in a difficult position at the moment. They often work on a very local scale initially, but then try to reach out to the world. What can they do?
I think, again, it's about thinking about things differently. Look at what the young people are doing today. Because more often than not, there's a huge disparity between what the young people think are cool and what the kind of old boys think are cool. And so if you're trying to sell more wine and the other point making is, so more often than not, the young are more in tune with what's going on in the world in terms of diversity. So it's worth talking to the young people in and around the cities, engaging them with them on the level that they engage with. Long gone are the days of long, 4 or 5 paragraph emails. People are more into things like WhatsApp and Instagram and so on and so forth. So that's the level at which producers should start engaging with them, or start engaging with us, I should say. So drop down from your classic classic emails and I'm sending out my wine list, and engage on a social media level.
Mm-hmm. Mags, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. This is obviously a massive subject, and we could go in all sorts of directions with it. Hopefully, we've kept to some sort of thread. It's been as you say, an important conversation to have. Hopefully, it contributes to the dialogue in some way. Look forward to having a drink with you somewhere along the line.
Wonderful. Me too, Paul. Take care. My pleasure.
Great. Take care.
Cheers.
Listen to the Italian Wine Podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We're on SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, Himalaya FM, and more. Don't forget to subscribe and rate the show. If you enjoy listening, please consider donating through ItalianWinePodcast.com. Any amount helps cover equipment, production, and publication costs. Until next time, cin cin.